Welcome to the Ask Lee segment of my channel, and if you have any questions regarding magic, spirituality, witchcraft, demonology, the occult, whatever it may be, then all you have to do is drop it into the comments of any of the Ask Lee videos and I will add it to the queue. And I do these every Wednesday, so just look out for your questions. Welcome to my channel. You are entering the world of magic and mysticism with your host, Lee W. Johnson. Keep the lights on and help improve the channel by becoming a supporter for just $2.99 per month. Hit the join button. Okay, so today we are, well, let's just start with a question, shall we? From Linda Green, a question. Can or should you offer blood to a human spirit while performing necromancy? No, don't. And this I have found recently is contradictory to what a lot of people actually seem to think. And this includes demonology. I should have actually looked for the actual source, but there is mention of when you go and gather graveyard dirt, you do a particular offering or ritual, and you offer blood as a replacement for the graveyard dirt that you're taking. I also saw somebody recently who was referring to it. There was a comment to a post about ancestral worship, and they said that, you know, when you work with the graveyard or do graveyard magic, you offer blood, and don't offer blood. Firstly, blood is it's life force. Okay, it's part of what makes us living, as opposed to dead. So the dead don't require blood. They are the dead, the beloved dead. They don't need your blood, they don't want your blood. But more than that, if you are offering blood to disembodied spirits, those that stick around who do not make it across or do not make a transition from this world to the other world, they usually referred to as the hungry ghosts. And in that regard, if you start feeding the dead blood, then the hungry ghosts are going to come along and pick that up, and they're going to take that as an offering for themselves, and they're going to attach to you. They're not going to leave you alone because you're not feeding them blood, which brings them closer back to life. So, when you're doing necromantic work, when you're working with the dead, when you are doing graveyard work, anything of that regard, don't do offerings of blood. Okay, simple, really. Alright, let me go to the next question. Linda Green again. Thanks for the questions, by the way. Do humans reincarnate as animals? Do animals ever reincarnate as humans? This is really going to depend on your own worldview and your own beliefs. If you are focused a lot on Buddhist beliefs, then you'll probably find that depending on the karma you've collected, if you are human, you could descend back down the ranks into animal, to plant, etc. But an animal who has gained good karma can then ascend the steps, ascend the ladder, and reincarnate as human. So yes, humans can reincarnate as animals, and animals can reincarnate as humans. But that's just one worldview, that's one perspective, that's one belief. If talking from my own personal worldview, when we die, we get thrown into the cosmic soup, and we get mixed up with all of the souls that are in there. And that doesn't just include humans, that does include, it comes from an animistic point of view. So it does include animals, it does include birds, fish, mammals, stones, rocks, trees, plants, everything that has a spirit from an animistic point of view. So everything gets thrown into the cosmic soup, it all gets mixed up, and then at some stage a blob gets taken out and placed into a new body. That body can be plant, animal, rock, whatever, or human. So it's not really a case of you were good in the previous life, therefore you now get this reward, or you were bad in the previous life and therefore you get demoted down from human down to animal. It's not a case of that from my own, as I said, from my own perspective. It's really just the experience that we need to have going through different lives. So we get mixed up, blob gets pulled out, put into a new body, and lives out its life until it dies and then gets thrown back into the cosmic soup. So we get mixed up with, it's not this pure soul idea either, whereby you are a human being, you die, your soul is pure and it stays that way, and then it just gets transplanted into a new body when you get born again, or when you get reincarnated. It's not that pure soul transition either, and that forms a lot of other people's beliefs, but in mine it's a mixture of many different souls, or soul parts, or essences that get mixed together and put into a new body, and we experience the new life from that perspective. So again, all relates back to your own personal beliefs and your own worldview. All right, next question. Words have power. That's where the question is from, the person. Would love to see an in-depth video on opening the mind's eye. And if I'm doing visualization in the magic, is it just my imagination, or is the magic actually being done? Love this video, Lee. Always watching for your content. Thank you very much. Okay, opening the mind's eye. This is actually perfect timing, because if you go back to Monday's video, I did the review of Matt Oren's book, Psychic Witch, which covers all of this, everything and more. I do absolutely 100% recommend that book. It's absolutely fantastic, and it explains everything in depth. You can get all your answers in that book, really. But to give you a brief rundown, in-depth video on opening the mind. Sorry, won't be an in-depth video then, because it is quite a large topic. But when we talk about the mind's eye, we can talk about the witch eye, or the witch sight. And this is really just referring to the psychic senses. And everybody will experience the psychic senses in different ways, depending on which of the senses are more developed than others. And we all have natural abilities, and we can take those natural abilities and we can enhance them, and then work on the ones that are not so easy to come by, and try and work on those ones. But overall, it's working with the psychic senses, and when we're doing that, we are seeing with a capital S with our entire being. We use this word seeing, or the sight, and we therefore often relate that back to just the eyes, because we see with our eyes. We do not see with our skin. We do actually, but we do not see with our tongue. We do actually. But you get what I'm saying. We use the word see and the sight, and we therefore relate it just to the eyes. But when we're talking about the psychic senses, we're actually seeing with the entire being. So we're using all of the senses to see. And that's really what the mind's eye is. The other part of that question, also, if I'm doing visualization in magic, is it just my imagination, or is the magic actually being done? Is there a difference? Do you really think there's a difference between your imagination and the magic actually being done. And again, coming back to Matt Oren's book, there's an emphasis on the imagination. One of the exercises in there is actually to role play and to use your imagination, because it's a very important aspect of magic. Now, one of the main reasons for this is because, referring to our mirror neurons, there is a term for this, and I'm trying to remember what it was. I'm always forgetting words. I think I'm getting old. Maybe somebody can remind me in the comments. It's got completely gone. But it's something like plasticity. So if you remember what it is, just let me know what it is in the comments. So basically, the brain cannot distinguish between imagination and reality. So if you are watching a movie or reading a book and you're completely immersed in this movie or this book, in the actual scene that's being played out in front of you, and you kind of become the character, the brain doesn't know that you're not the character. It thinks you are the character. So when we're doing magic, we can often explain it in terms of, especially with visualization and manifestation techniques, we can explain it in terms of what we imagine is reality. So when we are visualizing something that we want in our life, we are always told to visualize it from the present state. And the reason for that is that we need to make it present. We need to make it reality. And it can only be reality if it is in the now. And what happens is, if we constantly visualize this scenario where we are in this situation where we have what we want, then the brain cannot recognize between that and what is actually here now, reality. So what it needs to do is it needs to adjust everything in order to align with that reality, because it doesn't know the difference. So visualization and imagination is extremely important in magic, and there is no difference between that and actual real magic. Okay. Let's go on to the next question. Okay, Twilight Wanderer. Are these worlds like planets or something else? I can't remember what video this was relating to. I'm assuming it was a video. But what I'm going to assume with this is that we're referring to the three worlds. Upper world, middle world, lower world. These are not the planets. The planetary forces, the planetary aspects, the archetypes of the planets, they can be worked with. But just reading the question, are these worlds like planets? ... planets. I'm going to assume we're talking about the three worlds. So upper world, middle world, lower world. What we find is that we consider these things to be maps. If we have a look at the Kabbalistic tree, for instance, it's structured in such a way, and it has paths leading from one sphere to another sphere, and so you can take different paths up the tree of life, and we consider this to be a map of the cosmos. When we talk about the three worlds, upper, middle, and lower, which can also be referred to as the realm of sky, land, and sea, from the Celtic cosmology. But we also have Yggdrasil, which has 9 worlds. We have, if you have a look into the Mayan and the Aztec, when they talk about the lower world, they separate it into, depends which source you read and which actual culture we're basing this in. But it could be, they could map out 11 worlds in the lower world, or 13 worlds in the lower world. So we have these worlds which are other worlds. Another word for other worlds is inner worlds. So what you'll probably find is there is a relation between the microcosm and the macrocosm. So the macrocosm would be the larger cosmic, the larger universe, and the microcosm is it's a replica of the macrocosm, but it's smaller. It's the small universe. And we can think of ourselves as being the microcosm, and everything beyond us being the macrocosm. We can take it smaller. We can go into an atom, and that atom is a microcosm. Beyond that is the macrocosm, because it's all repeated. We have the small universe and the big universe. Now I've forgotten where I was going with this. Worlds. Yes, inner worlds. So when we're talking about the inner worlds, and when I talk about the astral temple, I often refer to the inner temple. And when I do magic, when I do spell work, I often talk about going inward, going into the inner temple, and it's the same thing, going into the inner worlds. So you're entering into the microcosm, which becomes the macrocosm, as above, so below, etc. So we do tend to map out these worlds and give them a structure, but that's only to try and interpret, to try and understand. What you've got to try and remember is these worlds are not three-dimensional. We're talking about a five-dimensional reality, trying to explain it and understand it in a three-dimensional way, because we are three-dimensional beings. So it makes it easier to map them out. But try not to think of them as a three-dimensional thing where you step from this world into, you take a step into the next world. They are all in the same space, time, all in the same existence. But we can move from one to the other. We can experience them differently. If we were to think of Carlos Castaneda's books and the teachings of Don Juan, what we find there is he speaks of the assemblage point. And the assemblage point is a kind of like a spear almost. Our energy is in the form of an egg or a ball, and it's just lines of energy that flow constantly. But it kind of comes in as a funnel into our heart and then through, and that's the assemblage point. What Don Juan spoke of was that we can shift the assemblage point to different positions, and as we shift the assemblage point, we experience reality, different realities, alternate realities. Now these alternate realities can be as subtle as a mood change, or as completely and utterly different as a totally different world. Where the sky is green and the grass is red type of thing. Now, again, this is a completely different way of looking, or all of these are different ways of looking at these worlds. But they are worlds within worlds within worlds. And when we talk about the upper, middle, and lower world, it's a very basic idea of the three realms, the three worlds. We often refer to the three parts of the soul, which is found in many traditions, which then relate to these three worlds. But what is interesting that I found out recently from Rev Kai actually is in the heathen worldview, the upper world is actually beyond the perceivable universe. So beyond the stars and the planets that we can perceive, experience, beyond that, into a realm that we don't know anything in there, we don't know what the spirits are, that's the upper world. And the heathens do not go into the upper world because it's some place you just do not go, because it is beyond our experience. And then we have the middle world, and then we have the lower world. But when we are splitting these worlds into, and again, I'm going to come back to five-dimensional realities versus three-dimensional explanations. When we're splitting these worlds into their inhabitants, some will refer to the lower world as that's the place where the ancestors reside. In the middle world is the Fae, and in the upper world is where the gods are. Some people will place the gods with the ancestors in the lower world, and if we have a look at Yggdrasil, Norse mythology, we have Hell, which is usually placed in the lower world, in the underworld, and that's where our ancestors are found. So, even when we are trying to place inhabitants into these different worlds, it's not a solid thing. You probably find that there are Fae, because Fae are usually found in the middle world, because the middle world is a world which is our world. It's this world, but it's kind of slightly off sync or out of sync. So if we brought them both into sync, then we would see the Fae. The Fae would experience everything that we experience here. The two would overlap and become one. They are, you see, this gets very difficult because they are already. But to try and explain it it's the two worlds are kind of out of sync. Okay. But this is the middle world, and they're just slightly apart, so that we do not experience the Fae on a daily basis. We do not interact with them. At one point, people did. In history, it's said that people did interact with the Fae on a daily basis. They weren't as separate as we experience it now, and that separation is said to have been caused by technology, by our own ignorance, through our own separation from the separation of matter and spirit. So we have to bring matter and spirit together, and we will get to experience this in a more tangible way. So that would be the middle world, and that's usually where the Fae are, the nature spirits, the land spirits, the forces which we experience in this reality. And the thing is that the Fae can also be experienced in the lower world. The gods can be experienced in the lower world. Spirit guides can be experienced in all of them. So, I am a very logical, technical person. I have that brain where I have to try and put everything in boxes and categorize everything. And this has been one of my biggest challenges in magic and spirituality and witchcraft, is to try to understand that these things cannot be put in a category. You cannot say the ancestors are only in the lower world, the gods are only in the upper world. It doesn't work like that. It's a 5-dimensional reality. So you need to try and break away from, categorizing everything and placing everything in boxes, because it's just going to confuse the hell out of you at the end of the day. All right. I think that answers that question. I hope that's what you were referring to. If it wasn't, just let me know in the comments again, and I'll add it to the list. All right. So I think that's enough for today. I'll see you next week with more. Have a good one for now. Cheers. Bye-bye.